So like my running joke is that I have yet to like script an introduction or anything, but it's out of my comfort zone to just let myself kind of struggle, but like we always get there. So um yeah, awesome. Well, hopefully welcome back to Busy Reading Romantasy. I am Kalisa. This is a podcast all about mostly romantasy books with a little asterisk of like I also kind of just talk about whatever interests me, wherever my curiosity lie, and of course, open-mindedness is an important piece of what we're doing here. And it's really exciting because I've made a lot of new friends in the process, and today I'm here with Krystle. How are you?
Huh? Hi, how are you? I'm good.
I'm good as well. We are currently recording this during like Thanksgiving week, so it sounds like it's been a bit of a week for both of us.
It has been a week. It's been, it's a short week, but I still the same amount of stuff to get done. And I decided to release that I'll be releasing 3 episodes of my own podcast this week,
Oh my
none of
goodness.
which are edited. So, it's a week.
Yep. And then you're like, why did I do this? And then you're also like, but I love this.
Right? Exactly. I'm like, I love this, but why am I doing
Yeah,
it?
I don't know what's up with that. I'll have to look into that. Um, awesome. So if you would like to, we met when you had invited me to the book podcast group, which has been really great, and we will get to that. But before that, I would love to talk a little bit more about your journey as an author and just what kind of got you into, first of all, reading and then deciding, hey, I'd love to write.
So I have been a big reader my entire life since I read my first book as a kid, which was In a Dark, Dark Room. And I do still have my original copy packed away
Oh,
somewhere, but
oh
I do
wow.
still have it. Yeah, and I loved that goofy little scary story, and I was immediately hooked. I started writing my own stories when I was in like second grade. I wrote a story for a like young authors competition, and I did become a finalist. I didn't win anything, but I did become a finalist. And my story was about like a little girl who moved, and when she moved, she had no friends, but then she met a cat, and that cat was her best friend.
Amazing.
And now what I write now is very, very different than that.
We've evolved.
We have evolved. Well, so I wrote a lot of little short stories as a kid. Um, but then as I got older, then I switched into fan fiction, which I talk about a lot on my own podcast, Must Love Books. And now I'm moving away from fan fiction and into my own fiction. Of course, the one that I'm working on primarily right now is loosely inspired by a fan fiction I wrote in high school.
That's
And
amazing.
I know I'm like, I'm gonna, write my own original things here. And then I immediately just went back to rewriting a fan fiction. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, well, you know what? My other ideas, which are currently on pause while I finish up my current project.
Mhm.
Those ones are a lot more original. But I just had to, this fan fiction has stuck with me since I was in high school. It is still posted somewhere in secret, and I do still occasionally get hits on it, which is just blows my mind because this is like 15 years old.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah. So I'm
that's
like, it's
amazing.
it's just always stuck with me. So I'm like, okay, I've gotta rewrite it for, one, modern audiences, and two, to be, take my original ideas that I had back
Mhm.
and create my own world with them and get this out there because clearly it's something people enjoy reading if this 15-year-old fan fiction is still getting hits.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. That when you're telling me about writing in like elementary school, that brought me back to I remember I had an assignment where we did like a Cinderella retelling. We had the template, but then we could add the details to kind of like make it our own. And what stood out to me, it was really cool because we got blank books that we got to write in our story and like illustrate it ourselves and everything. But for the love of me, I could not spell the word vacuum. And like my teacher wouldn't tell me how to do it. She was like, go look at a dictionary. And I'm like, I understand, but I can't find it. Like it was a whole thing. That one
You
stood
know
out
what?
to me.
Vacuum is a hard word, let me tell you.
It is. It is. And I do transcription work part-time as well. And it's like the words that like commission, things with double letters where I'm like, is it the double M, double S? And it trips me up. I would love to know more about your current work in progress, Blood and Lies.
Yeah, so Blood and Lies, this is the fan fiction turned original work.
Mhm.
And um so this is basically, I'm describing it as a ghost hunter romance.
Oh, okay.
And so we have our main character, Kara, and she absolutely does not believe in ghosts, despite the fact that they keep haunting her.
Mhm.
And she is very much like, no, it's just a trick of the light. It's faulty wiring. There must be a draft. I'm seeing weird things in the mirror because of the fog. Like, and none of it is a ghost. That couldn't
Mhm.
possibly be anything spooky. It's not real. She's just constantly finding logical explanations behind the weird phenomena that has been following her entire life since her mom passed away in a car accident that she was also in.
Mhm.
So to her, this is these like ghostly phenomena is just her grief. And it's
Gotcha.
just
Yeah.
how her grief presents around her, and she feels haunted because she's still very hurt by her loss. And so we have a big part of that is her struggling to come to terms with what is and is not real.
Mhm.
And now that we are coming up on the 20th anniversary of her mom's death, things are really like building up to becoming just nonstop to the point where she can no longer explain things away and she can no
Mm.
longer just kind of close her eyes to it and close her mind to it.
Mhm.
So, she at this time she is working on opening her family's bookstore, which once used to be her mom's.
Mhm.
Then after she passed, her aunt took it over. Well, now her aunt retired and moved to Florida, as they do.
Yes, yes.
And Kara, she has finished with college. She has, a little bit of family money that she has come into. So she is putting in the time and effort into kind of reopening the bookstore, but with a cafe as her best friend. Lamai is a chef, and she
Mm.
wanted to open a restaurant. But restaurants are the hardest business to open, and most new
Mm.
restaurants fail within the first 3 years. And that is a true fact. So they decide to go into business together and they're reopening this bookstore and cafe together. So
Mhm.
this is what Kara is trying to put her focus on while she has all this supernatural phenomena around her.
Mhm.
On top of all of that,
Mhm.
her childhood home, which is right by where this car accident that caused her mother's death was, is finally going up on the market because her dad always like saved it and it's like, you can, have this house. It was a beautiful, great big home that they once shared, and he never really wanted to sell it. But now it's time. It's been 20 years. She doesn't want the house. She doesn't even want to go there. He hasn't stepped foot in it in years. So they decide, okay, it's time to sell.
Mhm.
So Kara's job is to just kind of finish clearing stuff out. They don't have much stuff behind except for her mother's stuff that they never quite had it in their hearts to move.
Mhm.
So while clearing out her childhood home, Kara finds some boxes that have some kind of weird newspaper articles, and there's some crosses, and she's finding just some odd books that she at first just kind of explains away as, well, her mom used to write horror on the side. So this
Mhm.
could have just been some kind of funky research that she had kept.
Mhm.
Now, while they're going through the boxes, she, with her potential paramour, Jesse,
Hmm.
kind of start to discover some family secrets in these boxes. And at this point, Jesse is a complete believer. He's like, yes, your mom hunted ghosts.
Hmm.
And Tara is very much, no, ghosts aren't real. How could she
Hmm.
hunt ghosts? They're not real. This is just book research. You're being silly. Well, Tara is forced to confront her fears head on when Jessie is possessed by a violent poltergeist who is hell bent on destroying what is left of Kara's family for good.
Hmm.
And so that takes us into, I mean, that's the plot. There it is.
There you go. Eat it up.
Eat it up. So
Yeah.
it is a ghost hunter romance with a lot of elements of gothic horror. And I really hope everyone likes it. I'm in
Yeah.
the querying tension. Let me try that again. I do this a lot on my own podcast. I constantly
Hmm.
trip over my words.
Yes.
I'm not a natural public speaker, so having a podcast was like not
Yeah.
the greatest idea. But it's
But here
working.
we
We
are.
edit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here we are.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's amazing. First of all, I am the same way as well. It's been quite a journey to have coherent sentences and try to put my thoughts into words. Not not always, it doesn't always work out, but we're here and we're doing it. So great job. And otherwise that sounds great. Like I am also the type of person that it's funny that this is what I read. And if it were anything to deal with in my real life, I'd be like, no, mm-mm, no, no, no.
No.
So that definitely sounds like right up my alley, something that I could read and relate to, and I'm already interested. I want to find out like what's happening, what's going on, why. Yeah,
Well, thank you. I am in the querying trenches right now. And while I'm going through querying, I'm kind of just like, I'm constantly tweaking my manuscript. I'm
gotcha.
always adding more and making changes. So I need somebody to like hire me so I can actually stop writing in this book because I never actually stop. I
Yeah.
have I have finished this manuscript multiple times. Now I'm like, you know what? Maybe I can like I'll think of a scene. I'm like, ooh, that's something that I'd like to include. And then I
Yeah.
go in and add that.
Hmm.
And then later on, like I'll be doing something completely random, not touching this book at all, and be like, oh my
Hmm.
goodness, I need to have this happen instead of that happen. So then I go back and write some more. So someone just actually take this book so I stop writing it.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's amazing. How are you finding the process so far of just getting a book out there in the world?
So querying itself, I think, is very easy
Hmm.
because you can use something like Query Tracker and you can, put in your search terms and find a list of agents. And you can even just submit to them right on there. I do recommend doing this for other potential authors, is going to each of those agents' actual websites and,
Hmm.
seeing what what they have on their website in regards to what else they have covered or what they're looking for right now, because Query Tracker isn't always updated.
Gotcha.
And then there's other sites like that too, like Manuscript Wishlist. You can also check on there. So it's really just up to you as the author how much research you want to put into it.
Hmm.
Um, I personally have a list of, I think, 12 agents that are really within, who I just feel kind of vibe with,
Gotcha. Yeah.
what you cover kind of meshes with what I'm writing. But I don't submit to everyone at once.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
literally do just like one or two at a time.
Yeah.
And I kind of made this list in like based on like my top favorites, but then I also made this list kind of by average response time
Okay.
according to Query Tracker. Like the ones who say they respond within 3 days, all right, I'll do those first ones.
Hmm.
The ones who say, their response rate is more like 3 to 6 months, I'm gonna, do those
Yeah.
ones last. And I don't really have like a reason why.
Hmm.
I just do it that way. So like any querying authors, like you don't have to follow my method. Find
Right.
what works best for you.
Yeah.
And that's totally fine. You know, everyone's
Yeah.
going to query differently. The
Gotcha.
hardest part about querying is creating an actual query letter and your synopsis. I hate writing synopses. Like, don't
Mhm.
ask me what my book is about. I just wrote it. Why why would I know what it's about?
Right.
And that for me was always the hardest part. And I have rewritten my query letter and synopses like 6 times at least.
Yeah.
And like I'll get feedback from somebody like, "Oh, that might be an important change to make." Okay. And so just like with my manuscript, I'm constantly changing my query letter.
Gotcha.
So again, someone please buy this so I can stop writing it.
Right.
I would
Okay.
like
So
to write my next project.
as someone who knows very little about publishing, but just in like starting to talk with authors more, I'm very interested in the process. So you query to find an agent, and then basically the agent helps you get the book published, or like they take care of all that stuff,
So
or
the so yes, you query to an agent and then the agent basically queries to the publishers.
gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
Now there are a lot of publishers that don't require you to have an agent, especially if you were looking into
Hmm.
like indie press, then
Hmm.
an agent isn't really required and you can skip that step.
Hmm.
But if you are interested in trying some of the bigger ones, then you have to have an agent in order to submit there.
Okay.
Um, Even if you don't plan on trying to get in with one of the bigger ones, an agent can also help with, the contract process and all of that.
Hmm.
And I believe some agents will also like kind of provide some edits to your novel as well
Oh, gotcha.
before.
Okay.
Yeah, so you and your agent can, go back and forth on that novel a few more times before
Hmm.
then you go to um, publishers. And then when a publisher says yes, then there will probably be more edits from the publisher. And then there will be things like acquisition meetings on the publisher end where they decide, like, are we going to actually buy this book? What will the money look like? The budget? What do we think we could make from this book?
Hmm.
And then that's when they decide yes or no.
Gotcha. That's so interesting. And that makes sense about your process of like taking the time to find someone that, like you said, you vibe with, that you're on the same page with. And yeah, I completely agree that I feel like personally I would want a quick response as well, because um, I imagine if it's taking them months to respond, it's because they're busy, which sounds good, but also like I want someone on my team that, you can bounce things back and forth. And if you're then working on other stuff as well. What an interesting process. I love learning. Like I kind of nerd out on different things and understanding how it works on the back end. I'm like, whoa, okay, very cool. Well, I was just gonna ask if you had other fan fictions that you're gonna plan to turn into original works, or do you have like those other ideas already kind of bubbling up around what you might work on next?
So this one is my only fan fiction that I'm going to be working into a
Gotcha.
real novel, at least at this point. I mean, I have others, but at this time, at least, it doesn't feel right. Like,
Fair.
I'm
Yeah.
just not feeling the vibe.
Yeah.
Um, Not that they weren't fantastic fan fictions
Of
written by
course, obviously.
15-year-old self, they were fantastic fan fictions, the best.
Yeah, absolutely. That was not a question.
But this one came from a fandom that has always stuck with me since I saw the very first episode, and that is Supernatural.
Yeah.
Um, you know, Probably gave that away with the ghost hunter vibe. And so at this time, that's the only one I'm planning to move forward on. But I do have other projects that I kind of dip into every now and then
Hmm.
in between. I mostly, focus on my projects one at a time. But sometimes inspiration strikes and you got to step in. So I
Yeah.
do also have a Romantasy trilogy that I have very detailed outlines for. So sometimes it's calling me and I dive right into, but that one will be like enemies to lovers with a forced marriage slash marriage of convenience,
Mm.
warring kingdoms, all the really good romantasy stuff. And that one I'm really, really excited for to get into because that one
Yeah.
I have literally like a 20-page outline.
That is amazing. Okay, so first of all, Supernatural, that's one of those ones where when you hear other people talk about it, in my head, I'm always like, I need to get into that. Like, that sounds amazing. And then also, I'm the type of person where I always get like somewhat overwhelmed because when I jump into things, like, I'm committed. I'm currently on One Piece as like a trade agreement with a friend of mine. He's reading ACOTAR and I'm watching One Piece. And that's already like I'm 80 episodes into 1,000 plus
Yeah.
episodes, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what have I done? But I am interested. I think eventually, maybe someday I'll get to that. And that the other sounds amazing as well. I find that more and more I get these ideas that kind of bubble up, and I think it would be fun to try to write a book as a hobby. I don't know that it's anything I would necessarily pursue or have time for. I have too many hobbies, but I love I think getting involved and like I said, talking with more authors and things like that. I just love hearing all the ideas that everyone has, and that's why I'm in the like romantasy fantasy genre is because it's like it's limitless and you never know what people can create. Forced proximity is one of my favorite tropes, so I am excited for that for you as well.
Yeah, well, I will definitely share it with you when I have something to actually share.
Yeah, absolutely. All in good time. All in good time. But I did want to also switch focus and talk about your podcast as well. If you could give us a little rundown on what you do over at Must Love Books.
So, Must Love Books podcast is, I like to joke and say it is your favorite book podcast, chaperone.
Hmm.
And, but it is a book podcast for book lovers as well as authors, readers, editors, and it is by a massive book lover, myself, who is also, as we've gotten into, an author and a writer. And with this podcast, I got the idea early January 2024 and officially launched about 3 weeks later on a complete whim with very little preparation or
Amazing.
idea or
Best
I'm
way.
like
Best way to start.
exactly. I like dove head in first. I bought a beautiful, nice blue microphone. I love my microphone. Her name is Blue. And I bought a microphone. I'm like, okay, well now I'm starting a podcast.
There you
Like
go.
there was really no planning. It was just, I like books and I started listening to a couple and I was on a podcast. And unfortunately, I don't know if they ever started, um, actually released, but I was on a podcast that was in progress of setting up and I did like a little interview with the host and another author and we were like, she's the experienced author, and I'm the one who is still in the trenches of getting my work done. And so it was a lot of fun just getting to talk about our writing and our general love for books. And I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, I could do a book podcast. That was fine. I could do it. So I bought a mic and I did it. Um, so it is now, as we said, we're recording in November. I am not even a year in this podcast yet, but I am releasing my 50th episode this week,
Woohoo!
which is incredible
Hmm.
and insane.
Hmm.
When, in the early days, I had like 8 guests interested. And I'm like, this is great. I have 8 people who want to come on my podcast. I
Yeah.
have a book club, which I will get into in a minute, but I
Yeah.
have a book club that I was including on my podcast. I'm like, Awesome. That's a great start.
Yeah.
I can do that. Like that's fantastic. And then all of a sudden, like a month later, I had like 30 guests. And I'm like, oh, okay. I
Yeah.
guess people like this.
Hmm.
So I have had self-published authors, I have trad authors, I have indie authors with, indie small presses. I have new authors who are debuting their first book. I have some New York Times and USA Today best-selling authors on my list. So I really have a lot of variety of authors, of genres,
Hmm.
of types, just so much out there. And I'm honestly like, I'm still blown away. I can't believe it.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Not
That's
even a
awesome.
year in, I've got about 9 more episodes, at this point that I'm releasing this year. So I'll wind up with, I think, 56 total for 2024. And I already have a bunch on my calendar for 2025,
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well,
which is
first,
insane.
yeah, no, that is so amazing. And congratulations, because I think um as a perfectionist that is trying to just be better at just like showing up, I'm also a podcast producer. I work on a number of other podcasts in all sorts of different genres. And um the bottleneck is really people wanting to start, but then being like, I need to get, I need to look into what kind of camera I have. I need to look into what kind of mic I need, or I don't know how to edit, or any number of like, me joking about like, I don't even have anything scripted as like an intro or anything like that. But just starting is like the most valuable thing you can do, because as you go, you're going to quickly see what you actually really need. I had a similar situation where with my previous podcast for Book and Bottle, I had had the idea for it. And then 3 weeks later, we were filming for it. And we were filming via Zoom, didn't really know how we were going to make it work. I did have some editing experience, but I was like, I don't know, let's just go, let's just try. And I always think that's beautiful. And of course, for you to see the success of that and having such a calendar. She's not kidding. I'm actually scheduled on her calendar for like late January to
Right?
be on her podcast. So I just think that's um, amazing that you listened to that voice and followed and tried it out. And clearly you are getting like the results of people loving the content that you're making.
Yeah, it has been like, I just want to say, like, I am truly blessed that this many people are interested in talking with me about books and
Mhm.
also listening to me talk about books. Now because I am a predominantly a solo host podcast, I was very unsure because I tried recording a few episodes where I just like gave my book reviews and I hated it.
Mhm.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh my goodness, what am I gonna do with this?" I'm just sitting here like basically reading my review out loud and trying to sound interesting. And I'm like, I feel like I'm in
Yeah.
school doing a
Yeah.
project and I hate this.
Yeah.
So I immediately scratched that idea.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I need to have people to actually discuss with. And that's when I started bringing in different authors. Um, so every episode is featuring a different author, which has been super fun. I just want to mention some of the ones that I've had this year. So,
Yeah.
um, I'd have to say about a dozen of my authors, because they're mine. Once you're on my podcast, you belong to me. I
Absolutely.
exactly like I own you. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't
Pretty
know.
sure it's in there somewhere.
Yeah, in there somewhere. So like I've had Thea Guanzin, Lyra Celine, I've had S.T. Fernandez, Jacqueline Carey, who is one of my favorite authors for so many years, and having her on was honestly such an absolute honor. And then I've also had Amy Boyles, Claire Solly, Allie Samberts, Tara DeWitt, Joelle Wellington, and I literally have her book right next to me because I just got one of her earlier books. Actually, this one I think was her first book. They're Vicious Games. I'm going to show it to you.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm so excited to read it. So I just got another copy of one of her books.
Mhm.
She is a horror author, but every book she writes is like almost a new genre. And we were like
Oh.
joking around how like every book is like a new debut because she just kind of reinvents herself with each new release, and
Mhm.
just love that. I had Emily Blackwood and Keith Chow. I had an actor, Callahan Skogman. That was really cool with his debut novel, Blue Graffiti. Stacey McEwen, who was an absolute pleasure, and I absolutely love and adore her. Emma C. Wells, she wrote this wonderful, like, serial killer Barbie story,
Ooh.
which I highly recommend. This girl's a killer. Sarah Hawley, whose episode I just released last week at the time of recording.
Mhm.
And I've got so many exciting ones coming up for the rest of 2024 and finalizing a lot of my 2025 authors, which I'm so excited for.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is there anything that comes to mind? Not necessarily like I'm not gonna ask for a favorite author because that's just ridiculous. You're like everyone's so amazing. Um, but like any pieces of conversation that is a moment where it's like, ah, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, so I would say like one of the episodes, and this is one that I highly recommend to anyone to listen. I believe it's episode number 16. I spoke with the CEO of Eden Books. Her name is Robin Crawford, and they are an independent online romance publisher and
Okay.
bookseller. And we really went into the issue of book banning, which unfortunately is
Mm-hmm.
always a current relatable issue. So we discussed book banning, especially because she is based out of Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And we also talked about like the importance of diversity and representation. So that one is a really, really important episode that just always kind of sticks with me,
Mm-hmm.
and one that I always recommend people to, like if you're gonna pop into just one episode of Must Love Books podcast, this is the one to hop into.
Yeah, yeah. Amazing. I'll definitely have to check that out. And you also mentioned a book club as well.
Yes. So, as a special feature, and we call it a monthly feature, and it's really not monthly, it's really just whenever we have the time.
Fair.
But so, so a somewhat monthly feature is the Something Smutty Book Club.
Hmm.
And this is me with my semi cousins who I'm not actually related to. Um,
Beautiful.
exactly. Exactly. And we get together and we read something that is, we have some guidelines that we have to stick to. So, one,
Okay.
we're all very busy,
Mhm.
full-time workers. Most of us are also moms. So, we have to keep it under 400 pages.
Okay.
Two, it has to be available on Kindle Unlimited. Otherwise, we're going to have six people buying new books every month, and that's just too much. So
Yeah.
we do keep it to Kindle Unlimited reads that are
Okay.
less than 400 pages and that qualify as smut.
Hmm.
So whether that is like just a romance that's a little spicier, or if it is straight up erotica, like we've
Yeah.
done both. And when we started going for let's read things that are outside of our normal genres,
Right.
kind of expand our horizons, try something new. And then it sort of shifted into what is the weirdest eroticas that we can find, and let's read those.
I love that.
In our most recent episode, which will release the week that we're recording, it's going to come out tomorrow.
Gotcha.
I we found a erotica that was only 13 pages. So I read it out loud.
Yeah. Yes.
Read it out loud during our book club, and it was stuffed by the were turkey. Yep.
Yeah.
So we found some Thanksgiving shifter erotica, and I read that out loud for
Amazing.
everyone, for all of our listeners.
And you're like, yes, this is my life.
This is my life now. This is what I do.
Yeah. Oh, that is brilliant. I love that. I had a friend who briefly kind of got me not into that, but like it's a funny thing when you're together and you're like, oh, let's just check this out or whatever. And it was originally the one that was about the COVID virus or whatever. Um, and
Yeah, I've
then
seen that one.
the other one I started seeing a bit more of was the lady that I think ended up falling for like this sentient door. And I was like, oh,
Oh,
I don't know
yeah.
anything about it beyond that, but I'm like, amazing. I love that this is a thing and that you can just have fun and be silly with it. And it's amazing.
There is a lot of, I kind of refer to them as like satirical
Yeah.
erotica or like satire erotica, comedy erotica, however you
Yeah.
want to describe it. But yeah, we've definitely picked up a couple funky ones off that list. And I literally have a list. So I have a huge Excel document where I keep all my podcast stuff. And I literally have a tab called Unhinged.
Hmm.
And this unhinged tab is
Yes.
a list of, let's see, how many are there? 27 just goofy or satirical or
Yeah.
just absolutely wild eroticas that I've been able to find. And, every now and then we just kind of pick one off the list and we're like, all right, this week we're going to read this book where a lady is getting it on with a bee. Like,
Absolutely. And that's the brilliant part about reading, where you're like, all right, let's do it.
yep. And then
Yeah.
we get a few bottles of wine and make our snack tray, which is getting bigger and bigger every time. Like we started off with
Yes.
like a cheese plate, and now we're like everyone's bringing, we got a dessert, we got a main meal.
Oh, I
One time
love
we had
that.
Swedish meatballs. Like it's
Of
there's
course.
always
Yeah.
something going on. And we just spend like an hour or two drinking our wine and talking about these eroticas.
Oh, that is
Or
amazing.
sometimes I'll read them out loud.
There you go. Even better. No, that is amazing and fun. I feel inspired maybe to do to do something.
It is fun. It is a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah. A great way, and I think a great way to have those conversations. I am part of what I do is I'm very passionate about like let's talk about the things that a lot of us maybe don't talk about in our normal day-to-day lives. And I think reading is a great kind of opener for that of like we don't necessarily have to talk about our personal preferences. We're just talking about a book we read type thing. It's a great way to kind of dip your toes into more like you said, if it's just pure smut or, spicy scenes or whatnot, it's an interesting way to also get to know each other.
Oh, yeah.
That that would make a great the trend lately I've seen is like the hear me out cake. We need that
Yes.
with like wild books or like tropes. But
Yeah, we're planning to do a hear me out on the podcast at some point. We just haven't
there.
put in the effort of printing out pictures and putting them on sticks.
Yep.
Like
Too much, too
it's
much.
yeah, sometimes yeah, I'm just like, "Hey guys, we could do that this week." And then I'm immediately like, "No, I don't want to deal with that right
Yeah.
now."
Yeah. I feel that. I feel that. Okay. Maybe one day we can look forward to that. But
Exactly.
yeah.
It'll be a
Yeah.
2025 plan.
There you go. Yeah. Make sure we'll have appropriate time booked in the calendar and everything. And yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. But so I mentioned earlier that how we originally met was through a book podcast group that you had created. And it has grown, even just being part of it over the past few months. It has grown and become a space where plenty of us book podcasters can get together. We're supporting each other, we engage with each other's content, and then also just sharing tips on like the back end stuff around like, what are you recording with, or are you having these kinds of issues? And it has been so amazing. I don't know that I would have kept up with this to the level that I have had I not had that support, first and foremost.
Aw.
Second of all, I guess just I'm curious kind of what led you to creating all of that.
Okay, so yeah, the Book Podcast Connection, which you can find on Instagram at Book Podcast Connection,
Mhm.
is a networking group for, we now have over 60 book-related
Yeah.
podcasts, which is incredible and blows my mind. And I have our official Instagram page where we share our posts on, and I'm going to be making a directory where you can find everyone
Mhm.
and their podcasts and just have like a full list in one place. I keep saying I'm going to do it next week.
2025, we'll get there.
A 2025 project. So once again, this is an idea I had on a whim
Mhm.
and then just like went full throttle on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I'm
so I
sensing a
started,
theme.
yeah, sensing a theme. I have an idea and I just do it and I don't even think about it.
Mhm.
And then I get surprised because it actually works.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Well, yeah, I am just blown away by how much love and support and just the community that we've built in
Mhm.
our little group chat. And so I started it about 5-ish months ago. So I'm about 5 months into my own podcast at the time.
Mhm.
And I've got ideas and things I want to do. And I just want to like have other podcasts on my podcast. And I want to be on other people's podcasts.
Mhm.
And, the very first book podcast I connected with was Smut Up and Listen.
Mhm.
Shout out, love those girls. They were on my show and like we did a crossover episode and then we like put the episode on both of our podcasts. And I'm like, this is fantastic. I love this. This was awesome. Let's have a networking group. And then I made it and then I did it.
Mhm. Yes, you did.
And I started the book podcast connection. Right now it only exists on Instagram and we're starting a little bit of a Discord. I'm still kind of working out Discord because even though I've had a Discord account for about 10 years, I don't really fully understand how it works. So I'm still
Same
working on it.
here.
Yeah, like I've had it from the beginning, like for years, and I still never learned how to use it.
Mhm. Fair.
Still working on that, work in progress. But so I started basically looking around on Instagram, searching up as many key phrases I could think of to find other book podcasters. And I'm
Mhm.
literally like on Instagram in the search, like book podcast, bookish podcast,
Mhm.
author podcast, writer podcast, like, and just looking
Mhm.
and finding as many as I can and following them and being like, hey, I want to build a community. Do you want to join us? And then
Mhm.
everyone's like, yes, absolutely. Let's do this. And it's just grown.
Yeah.
I started with like five of us,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
No.
now we have over 60, and it has become like just a great place on, as you said, we engage with each other's content. We help each other with, any issues that we're having. Like, what kind of mic does everyone use? What kind of
Mhm.
camera? What do
Mhm.
you use to actually record and edit? What hosting platforms do you use?
Mhm.
Um, just the other day, I was asking, hey, where do I build a website? And then found out a program that I already paid for
Mhm.
does it. I've been paying for Canva for like 3 years and had no idea that you could build a website off of it. I'm like, I'm already
Oh.
paying for it. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, thanks, guys. I would not have noticed.
Right.
if it wasn't for our book
Hmm.
podcast connection. And I'm working on some events
Hmm.
for our group. I was playing with the idea of doing like a book podcast convention,
Hmm.
and it's a lot to kind of put together, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and I wanted to kind of keep it something kind of local to me.
Hmm.
Because I figured, you know what, I'm the one running it, so I can make it be by me.
Absolutely. That's how that works.
Like, actually, yeah, you guys can all come to me.
Yes.
So I would still like to do that someday down the road. That might be like a 2026 plan. Because conventions, guess what? They take a really long time to plan. You can't just
Hmm.
like have an idea and jump into it and hey, here's my convention. So that one's
Yes.
gonna take a little more time.
I
But
I've I already see 2026 events, and to me it's like
I have seen
I can't.
2026 events sell out.
Yeah,
I'm like,
it's
who has a
insane.
calendar that far in advance? Like,
Yeah.
come on, who knows how many random ideas I'm gonna jump into before 2026, guys? Like,
Right. Hang on. Yeah.
yeah, hang on. I'll come up with something. So for this year, me and one of our fellow podcast members from Page Rage, we are going to work on planning a kind of we keep seeing all these like reader retreats,
Hmm.
and we're like, we want one for our book podcasters.
Yeah.
So we're working on a book podcast retreat.
Hmm.
Um, and we're actually going to be talking next week about getting some plans going on that.
Woohoo.
Because she does actual event planning as like
Yeah.
a business. I'm like, great, I need a partner.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
But we do have one big event that is for sure happening this year, and it's going to be a virtual event.
Hmm.
And that is for the International Podcast Day. Or is it World Podcast Day? Let me double check that real quick. Is it international or is it world? International Podcast Day, which
Hmm.
is every year on September 30th. So we're going to be doing a big virtual event for our podcast. We're going to have as many of us as possible coordinate crossover episodes to all be released on the same day. And
Okay.
then we will do a bunch of like Instagram lives since that's the
Hmm.
main place where we kind of connect in.
Yeah.
So we'll do like short Instagram lives. Like, I
Amazing.
mean, there's 60 of us, so I can probably give everyone about 10 minutes.
Yeah. Right. Let's
But we
go.
will hop on a quick live and like, just kind of celebrate the
Yeah.
world of book podcasting. And, just like, hi, this is my podcast. This
Yeah.
is where you can find me. Here's
Hmm.
what I'm releasing right now. And I'm really looking forward to it. And I can't wait. So make sure September 30th, International Podcast Day.
Hmm.
And the book podcast connection is going to just take that holiday over.
Amazing.
It's
Yeah.
going to be for us,
Yeah.
actually.
It's gonna, we should just rename it now so everyone's clear what's
Yeah,
happening.
just rename it to International Book Podcast Day because we are an international group.
Hmm.
We do have several from across the pond who are
Yeah.
part of our networking
Yeah.
group. So we are an international group. So it
Yeah.
really is just our holiday.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, like I said, it has been an amazing place to find support and create those connections. I literally just filmed with Alyssa last night. We've quickly become good friends. She's on Stories and Spoilers, and
I'm
I
recording
got to
with her
meet.
next week.
Oh, amazing. Yep. And then I got to meet the ladies from Blush at Romantasy Con. So it's like it's all over the place. Connections are always so nice to just have someone who is in the same boat and we're all figuring it out together. And I think it's so beautiful because not only like podcasting is a great space to be in, and also especially like the book world. Um, where it's so cool to have 60 book podcasts and it genuinely is a space like we can all lift each other up. We can all win. It's not competitive. It's nothing like that. So it's beautiful, and that's why I wanted to get you on here because I'm like, we have to talk about this as we're wrapping up the year, as this has become like a pretty big part of my world. So thank you again for that, for just listening to that voice and being like, I'm gonna go for it, because it's a beautiful thing to bring people together and make those connections and friendships. And I will absolutely come to a retreat 100%. So excited for that. I think that's brilliant as well. And like even lately for more local people, I had met a friend and she lives about 45 minutes, an hour-ish from me, and we're gonna get together so she can be on my podcast. She doesn't have a podcast, but I was like, do you want to make a day of it? And we can just like film some content and, create aesthetic pictures and all that, because it's something that it's fun to do. I could do it by myself, and it's fun to do it with other people and, get do all that. So um, yeah, and like last thing as we're just finishing up, you kind of mentioned a lot of the things that are going to be going on in 2025. Is there anything that you're particularly like looking forward that's exciting for you?
Yeah, so let me pull up my 2025 list.
Ooh.
I literally I have an Excel sheet and just a new tab for everything. So one thing that I'm really excited for, and it is technically starting now, like
Hmm.
literally is available now, and that is the Must Love Books Podcast Awards.
Hmm.
And so anyone is able to vote for the awards. So first off, you can go on to my Instagram, which is at Must Love Books Podcast. Or you can go on my personal one, which is at Krystle Hope. Everything is connected on both pages there. So wherever you want to go and find it. But you can vote for your favorite 2024 releases. And I have a variety of topics and genres that you can vote for. There's best fantasy, best romance, best romantasy, of course,
Hmm.
best horror, best mystery, thriller, the best debut of 2024, and even have a just a your favorite podcast guest from my podcast of the year. Just because, give a little shout out, little props to
Yeah.
all the wonderful guests that I've had this year. So voting is currently available. If you don't want to vote on Instagram, because if you vote in the comments, then obviously your vote is public. So if you'd like to have a private ballot, that's absolutely available. All you have to do is send an email
Mhm.
to mustlovebookspodcast@gmail.com, and you can just send me all of your picks that way, and I will just get them all tallied up. And in early 2025, it'll be either late January or early February. I don't have an exact date yet, but then I will be doing the awards show
Yeah.
where I will announce all of our winners. And I'm just really excited. This is a really great way to honor your favorite books of 2024,
Mhm.
or anyone who you don't think got enough attention, you
Right.
know, a book you love this year that you'd like to see more of. And I kind of started this because I saw a lot of people complaining about the Goodreads awards,
Mm,
because of course it's all the top most popular books, and
right.
it's always the same books.
Yeah.
So I saw a bunch of people complaining about the Goodreads awards, and they're like, it's always just the top selling books. And I get why it is, especially for a place like Goodreads, but it just
Right.
seemed that there was a lot of people who felt that there were a lot of books that they wanted to see get more hype.
Hmm.
And I'm like, okay, I have a platform, I can do that. So once again, an idea, jumped in, did it,
Hmm.
boom. So now here are the book awards. You're welcome.
Amazing, as always.
And yeah, so you can vote on Instagram, you can vote by email, or I have a Patreon page for Must Love Books podcast. If you are part of the book lovers tier on Patreon, your vote actually counts for double points.
Mm,
So just a little extra perk, if you really want your book to win.
yeah. That's amazing. I feel like now I'm officially on the like, what will Krystle do next? What will she create next?
Yeah, it's gonna be something random and you probably won't expect
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait. Amazing. Well, thank you again for coming on to chat. It's been so great to actually connect, even though we've been talking via Instagram.
Oh yeah.
If you want to let everyone know one more time just where they can find you, all the things you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. So just a quick overview. I'm Krystle Hope, host of Must Love Books podcast. You can find me on Instagram at Krystle Hope and at Must Love Books podcast. I am also available on TikTok, and you're gonna laugh when you hear my username, but it is at Hutslayer_Hope.
There you
Because
go.
there it was it's a funny story. There was already a Krystle Hope on TikTok, and I mean I could have just done something simple like put like a dot or an underscore
Right,
or
right.
something. But instead, I was having a conversation with a friend about Star Wars, and we were discussing about the, in quotation, slave Leia, and how people were kind of just wanting to see it in a new light and see her less of servitude and more of a warrior.
Mhm.
And she, Princess Leia in the movies, takes out Jabba the Hutt in her slave uniform. So, Hut Slayer. And I just took it and I ran with it. And now I will never change it on TikTok. So,
Yeah, I
so you can
love
find
it.
me on TikTok, Hutslayer_Hope, because Hope is quite literally my middle name.
Hmm.
And don't forget to check out if you're interested in the Patreon. I have a free tier as well as our book lovers tier, and I post a lot of updates and some exclusive content. So that is available at Patreon/ Must Love Books podcast. And I didn't even mention this one. I have a sort of secret. It's secret now because I haven't made the official announcement yet.
Ooh.
So I guess you're hearing it here first.
Yes.
I'm doing an exclusive podcast series on Patreon called Let's Get Smutty.
Ooh, yes.
And Let's Get Smutty will be me and a couple members from our book club. And we are going to write our own short erotica stories.
Yes.
So we're going to write it over the podcast, and then anyone
Hmm.
who is part of the Patreon tier will get a copy of it, like an EPUB that you can put on your Kindle or your e-reader, for free as part of your contribution.
Hmm.
But then we will also release it as a self-published project on like Kindle Unlimited or something. I don't have all the details on that worked out, but we're
Right.
gonna start filming that content in January, so it's gonna be coming out pretty soon.
Yes.
And I'm really excited for this one.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, it's gonna be super fun. I will release the first episode like on my regular podcast.
Yeah.
So for those not ready to, make the plunge into Patreon yet, you'll get
Yeah.
to have a bit of a
Hey,
sneak peek.
little taste.
And then the full series will get posted on as a Patreon exclusive.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love it. And as we've learned, we'll figure out the details later. We're starting it now,
Exactly.
and then we'll
Exactly.
get that
Start it
all.
now,
Yeah.
figure out the details, and then we'll just go.
Amazing. That's so exciting. That is so exciting. I've been wanting to do something special, having like a spin-off. I don't know if it would be on like YouTube or something like that, but I was like, ooh, I feel like something like that is calling my name. Not necessarily writing, but maybe a more focused exploration of smut, is always fun.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And like we don't take it too seriously.
Yeah.
It's just a form of self-expression and
Yeah.
it can also be a form of entertainment and humor because
Hmm.
sometimes it's really funny.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's what literally Alyssa and I were talking about last night as well, of like kind of the unsexy parts of sex. That you can, when you add that sense of humor to it and you're able to laugh about it, and it brings another flavor to it. So that's always fun. But well, thank you again so much for joining me and having this great conversation. I am so happy I've learned more about you now, because I love that energy of like, let's just do it. We're gonna figure it out. And that is one thing that I will scream to the world of like, just do it. You'll figure it out. And what amazing things have come of it. So I'm excited to see
Thank
what
you. Thank you.
you are creating in 2025.
Thank you. It's one part spontaneity and one part unmedicated ADHD.
There you go. That's the recipe. Again, you've heard it here.
That's the recipe. Oh, and one part raw dog and caffeine.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
There's
Another
always, I
good.
mean, I got my coffee right here.
Yep.
Like there's always a caffeinated drink
Another good hobby of
within
mine.
reach. Yes.
Yes. Amazing. Perfect. Yeah. And then I will be on your podcast later on in 2025 as well. But yeah.
Yeah, I'll have you on your episode. So obviously I can't give a specific date just
Yeah.
yet because I'm
Yeah.
still working, finalizing a few details out, but stay tuned in February 2025 for another crossover.
Perfect. Perfect. Amazing. Well, if you have made it this far, thanks for hanging around. As you should know, you can watch this either on YouTube or Spotify, Busy Reading Romantasy. I also have an Instagram and a TikTok. They do get different content, so I recommend checking out both just for funsies. And thanks for hanging around for this year. I'm excited as well to just see all the things we're coming up with and growing together in 2025.